Hello drummers, it's Rob Litton here from drumstheword.com. Welcome to this free beginner drum lesson where today I'm going to show you how to play the most common drum beats out there. There turns out to be about 13 of them. You could argue that some could be split up even further, but really I found that there's only really sort of 13 different styles of drum beats, and you'll see what I mean as we go through the lesson, that exist, and then within that you can improvise around with the ideas, but they all consist of one sort of idea, and then you play around with the rest of the kit to create different feels of the same idea. It'll make sense as we go through it. I've got all 7 pages for you to download from my website for free, going over all 13 of the different types of drum beats, and then also I'll be showing you some variations as well underneath to sort of show you how you can play around with these ideas and turn them into different drum beats. But it starts off relatively simple, and then as we go through each of the examples, they sort of get more complicated. That's what I've tried to order them so they start off relatively simple, but then get more complicated. And don't worry too much about the variations that I'll be showing you. Some of them are more advanced than others. I really want to make this a beginner lesson, so it's really the first basic example that you need to be able to get down and play kind of comfortably, and then work on the variations afterwards. So the first one I've called the standard quarter note groove. And really what we're doing is we're playing quarter notes with the right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Underneath that we create a simple drum beat with the bass drum and snare drum. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So the fun thing about this, or the challenge if you like, is start to add extra notes, but while still maintaining that right hand pattern. You can play it up in the ride cymbal. But really, that's what I want you to focus on when you're practicing this idea, is it's the right hand that's playing a quarter note, and that's the idea, that's what we're trying to keep steady. Anyway, here's a couple of variations. Our next example is called the standard 8th note groove, that's what I call it, and it's really the most common drum beat you're going to hear. It's this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And just like the previous example, you can have fun with the bass drum and snare drum, adding extra stuff in. It's really this right hand staying steady, or adding some embellishments like that. But it's the 8th note groove. That refers, in my case, to the right hand playing on any surface, playing 8 notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here's some variations. This next example can be a little bit tricky to get going when you first start playing the drums, but a lot of fun to sort of to master, especially when you're playing faster tempos where you want to play 16th notes on the hi-hat. You use a double-handed 16th note hi-hat groove. This example and the variations I'm about to show you could be played one-handed at a slower tempo, but I'm sort of showing you, demonstrating how this groove can be played at a faster tempo, and therefore you need both hands in order to play it comfortably. You can't play these notes, these faster grooves, 16th note hi-hat grooves, with one hand unless you've got super technique. So we're really just playing right, left, right, left, right, left, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Don't get thrown off by my weird kit. You'll be playing over here right-handed, 1 E and a 2, and your right hand comes down off the hi-hat. It starts the hi-hat, but also comes down off the hi-hat to play the snare drum backbeat on beats 2 and 4. If you've got extra snare drum notes, then other parts where your other hand might come off at different times, you'll see that in the variations. But the basic drum beat I want you to be able to play comfortably is 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. Here's some variations. This next one is a funny one. It can be relatively easy for some drummers and then relatively difficult for other drummers, depending on what your first drum beats you learnt were. Usually you separate the bass drum and the snare drum, they're two separate parts on the kit. But in this example, to create sort of like a more pushy, more give the drum beat more forward momentum, we're going to be playing the bass drum on all 4 beats. And it's going to be coming down with the snare drum on beats 2 and 4 as well. So you might find it a bit weird where your bass drum's coming down with the snare drum. Here's what it sounds like slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, and then you sort of speed it up. 1, you can sort of feel that bass drum is sort of leading the way. Your right hand could be playing any pattern. It's the bass drum here that I want you to focus on. That's the 4 on the floor sort of feel. You're playing the bass drum on all 4 beats. Here's some variations. So as you heard in the variation for the last example, I sort of played the last 4 on the floor example with the floor tom as my right hand lead. And that's really what I'm talking about in this next example, the tom-tom groove. And really, the basic way you can play it is to play the right hand on the floor tom. And then you sort of add in some extra toms if you want. You break up the hand using the bass drum foot, a bit more advanced, that sort of stuff. But to start off with, I want you to sort of get comfortable. And it's not difficult, you just move your right hand from wherever it was playing to the floor tom. But it sounds completely different. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1. You can play around with the bass drum. You can move the left hand. All those examples there, I was just keeping the right hand steady, and of course you can play quarter note on the floor tom. There's all kinds of possibilities. Anyway, it's really just focusing on your right hand playing something on a tom that I want you to appreciate with this example. Anyway, here's a couple of variations just for some fun. This next example I've called the halftime groove, and really in a nutshell what we're doing is we're taking the snare drum from beats 2 and 4 and we're just playing one snare drum note somewhere in the bar. In this first example I'm going to be playing it in the middle. It's the most common place to play it, on beat 3. You could think of this as slow 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, or as I've written it as 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. It doesn't really matter how you count it, it's the same feel. You'll find that that fits with different songs at different tempos. If you've got a fast song, then you might feel it as 16th notes. If you've got a slow song, then you might feel it as 8th notes, or the other way around. Don't worry too much about that. Really what you want to be comfortable with is playing this snare drum on beat 3 of the bar to start off with, and then you can move the snare drum to different places and of course add extra bass drums as you get more comfortable. But slowly again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And here's some variations. Okay, this next one I've called the Motown groove. It's not really, I don't think it's officially called this. I don't think, some drum beats are sort of hard to give names to, but this first example, the basic example here, really does sound like a lot of classic Motown hits. I always think of Pretty Woman when I hear this drum beat. It just reminds me of, I think it's almost exactly the same as the drum beat on the song. But the idea is we're playing the snare drum on all 4 beats of the bar. Remember the previous couple of examples ago we had 4 on the floor with the bass drum playing all 4 beats. Now it's a snare drum and it creates a different feel. We get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. We get the downbeat, every beat of the bar being emphasised with the snare drum, creates a strong forward pulse that. Underneath that we can play around with the bass drum. In this example I've got the bass drum on 1, the and a 3 and the and a 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1. As you speed it up, da 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 da, something like that. Anyway, here's some variations of how you can play around with the bass drum underneath it. Okay, this next one I call the disco or dance groove. And really it's focusing on playing the open hi-hats on the ands of each beat. Now you could play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I'm opening the hi-hat on each of the ands there. You could play it all as eighth notes, which is fine, but in these examples I want you to sort of practice being able to play it, play the right hand just where the hi-hat opens on the ands. It sort of saves your right hand a bit of work because these drum beats tend to be played at a faster tempo. Anything you can do to sort of give your limbs a rest is going to help you to play faster. And you don't really have to play the 1, 2, 3 or 4 because that's where the hi-hat's closing, and so the hi-hat's sort of playing that note for you. So in this example, the first basic example, we're really just focusing on the open hi-hat and striking the open hi-hat on the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And to combine two ideas with the 4 on the floor idea with the bass drum, and this is sort of used a lot in dance music where the bass drum's going to be keeping the beats. So we just add that underneath of what I just showed you. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 just a little brief aside, of course you could play all the eighth notes if you wanted to. But you can see it sounds exactly the same. Anyway, here's some variations. So in this next example, we're going to change time signatures, and don't get too freaked out by that. This is called the 12/8 groove. This is what I call it anyway. You can call it other things. You can think of it as triplets. The 12/8 simply refers to how many eighth notes are in the bar. So usually we have 8 eighth notes in the bar. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 8. Well, now we've got 12. And the reason we got 12 is because it divides by 3. So you get 4 groups of 3. So you could also write these next examples as triplets in 4/4. Don't get too hung up on these little details. It's supposed to be a beginner lesson. Really just listen to what it feels like. We're playing groups of 3. So on the hi-hat, you can play anywhere, of course, with each of these drum beats. We're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can count all the way up to 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But you don't really have to. You can just have 2 groups of 6 or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. However you want to count it. But understand that really what we're doing here is we're playing groups of 3 notes between each of the felt downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Da 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 da. Giving that sort of triplet feel, groups of 3. Here's some fun variations. Okay, going back to 4/4, and we're playing basically the previous example I just showed you, but as triplets instead. Rather than having a bar of 12/8, we just got a bar of 4/4, and we're filling each of the beats up with 3 notes that are called triplets. It's going to feel very, very similar because it's really basically the same numbers. It's just we called it something else, and in this example, the shuffle groove, we're missing out that second note of each of the beats. And that creates a distinctive feel known as the shuffle. You've definitely heard it before in many, many songs. You might not know what it's called, but once you understand how to play it and you can play it comfortably, you'll start to recognize it in lots of different places. Basically, we're playing this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can hear that swung lilt. Da 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 da. So basically, one more time, what we're doing is we're skipping over that second note of the triplets. 1, 2, 3, 1, and playing the first and the third note, which creates that sort of shuffle effect. So on top of that, you don't have to count 1, 2, 3, 1. When you're playing a shuffle, you can count it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 to make it a bit easier for yourself. You can hear clearly where the downbeats are. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I just added the bass drum and the snare drum in there on beats 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Here's some cool variations. So taking the previous example, the shuffle, and then creating sort of a quasi new type of drum beat, the halftime shuffle groove. Remember we had the halftime drum beat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Well, this is the same idea. We're only playing one snare drum in the bar, but we're playing the shuffle pattern over the top. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And just like the halftime drum beat we did previously, you can move this bass drum and snare drum around to create all kinds of effects. So here's me doing a couple of variations and showing off a bit. Okay, this next example is the jazz ostinato, and this really isn't for beginners technically, but you can have a go at it to start off with. Jazz is one of those styles of music that you either play or you don't, you love or you hate. If you're into your jazz while you're learning your drums, then you're going to want to play this. If you're not into your jazz, then you don't really have to learn it. It comes up in different ways in other forms of music. It's nice to be able to play, it's good fun, but it's pretty advanced when you first have a go at it, especially when you try to learn independence with the snare drum and bass drum. The basic pattern though, is we're feeding in triplets. This is a triplet based rhythm. We're going to play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So you can hear in beats 2 and 4 we've got that third note of the triplet being played. 2 and 3, creating that shuffle. So it's a shuffle with 2 quarter notes at the beginning and in the middle. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3. You probably recognise it, or played on the hi-hat sometimes. So you probably heard that kind of rhythm before in styles of music. On top of that, what jazz drummers tend to do is play the hi-hat on beats 2 and 4. That creates our backbeat. Our backbeat is now the hi-hat foot, weirdly enough. And then on top of that, you play around with the bass drum and snare drum. You don't usually play this basic example where you're emphasising beats 1, 2, 3 and 4 like this. Usually in jazz you're playing around with the listener's ears. You don't state the downbeat strongly like this. But to get this going, to start off with, let's have a simple bass drum, snare drum pattern. So putting it all together, and when you first try this you'll be like, ah? So try to get this comfortable and perhaps add the bass drum in first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Then the snare drum as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and to sort of build it up any way you like. So like I said, you wouldn't hear this very often. This is a bit clunky, but at least it's allowing you to learn the ostinato. So here's another couple of examples where I'm sort of playing around with that effect where you're moving the snare drum and bass drum around, not necessarily playing any backbeats, just for a bit of fun and a bit of craziness. Here we go. So I've left this last example to the last because it involves some technique. The previous drum beats didn't require much technique. This does. This involves dynamics. We're playing sort of ghost notes and accents at the same time next to each other. This is called the train beat, and you'll see why as I speed it up it's going to sound like a train. And what we're doing, the basic example I've got for you here is playing 16th notes on the snare drum. 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, 3 E-ander, 4 E-ander. And you're not really emphasising those notes, not playing them too loud, but what we are going to emphasise, accent in this case, notated by the little triangle above the ands of each beat is the bad beats, the 1 and 2, and in this case we're actually accenting the back beats on the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 e and a 2 e and a 3 e and a 4 e and a. It could be counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Again, don't get hung up on the way we count things. It's not really important, it's how it feels, and then you can decide how to count how you like over the top, whatever helps you to get through. So a little bit of technique there. You have to be able to play relatively quiet notes and then accent notes and not feel uncomfortable with that. Now, the classic example here is where we're getting the bass drum and hi-hat playing 1 and 2. And you'll hear the hi-hat's going to come down with the snare drum back beats. 1 and 2 and 3 e and a 4 e and a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The fun comes in when you start to improvise a bit with the accents. So have a go at the basic example. Get comfortable playing that. Again, it's probably a little bit advanced for a completely new drummer because it requires those accents, but you can certainly have a go and see how you feel. Anyway, here's a couple of crazy examples for you. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, don't forget to download all 7 pages for free from my website. You'll find a link beneath this video. And really what I want you to take away from this lesson is it's not the individual drum beats on their own. It's really what you do with them that's important, and sort of at least recognising them. Hopefully in music you listen to, you might listen to a song and go, oh, that feels like it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or they're playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or it's like dum, 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 and sort of work it out for yourself by listening to music and hopefully spotting these drum beats appearing, because most music you listen to is made up of these types of drum beats. It's just what you do with the snare drum, with the bass drum, with your right hand is playing on the floor tom, the ride cymbal, the open hi-hat. All these kind of variations come into making it sound different to one another. But really there's only a few basic ideas going on in most music you listen to, most pop music, most music you probably listen to anyway, and me as well. So got any questions, feel free to email me, rob@drumstheword.com. You might want to consider signing up to become an online member at my website as well. And what I offer for £97 is a full year's online access to every single full video song lesson I've ever recorded and transcribed. And over at my website, what I really do for a living is I transcribe songs. Full songs from start to finish. You get the fully transcribed PDF drum chart. You get the video drum lesson teaching you every single bar in that song. And like I said, I've got over 550 full video song lessons teaching you famous and popular songs up on the website already. As a thank you for signing up, I give you access to hundreds more little videos teaching you many famous drum beats, fills and solos. I'll give you 3 ebooks I've written over the years containing hundreds more famous drum beats, fills and solos. And then over the year of your subscription, you also gain instant online access to all the new material that I upload for my members. And I record new lessons every week, and there's some earlier on holidays. So you've got lots of cool stuff to look forward to over the year of your subscription. But if you've got any questions about any of that, then feel free to email me, rob@drumstheword.com. And until our next drum lesson together, toodle pip and happy drumming to you.